It's 6:16, we have a quorum. We rise to the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone to the October 5th work study, 6:16. We have 4 members present tonight, Mr. Fay was unable to be with us. The topic this evening is a budget update from the clerk treasurer, who I believe is going to turn it over to Ann.
Yes.
So Ann from TAP, thank you. You have the floor.
Good evening, I'm Ann Cottingham with TAP Law, working with the town on behalf of your 2023 budget. I will try to speak directly in the microphone as the new instructions are clearly written up here for everyone.
Good job,
I'm happy to be here with you this evening because I think we have a really great work product to present to you today. We last met on September the 13th as an official special session so you could make some decisions about the budget, the direction you gave the clerk treasurer's office to move forward. And we left here with a clear understanding of what the budget with a proposed 6% increase for all of the employees, for the impact of a 6% increase, the capital purchases, the town's priority projects, et cetera, what that impact would mean as far as a balanced budget. Do our revenues exceed our expenditures or vice versa? And a funded budget, what do we have in our savings if we're going to kind of dip into those for certain funds for the ensuing year for the 2023 operations? The one charge that we heard loud and clear from all 5 council members was we want to find as much as we can find for total compensation for our employees. And what would that look like to have an additional 1% or additional 3%? What would it look like to keep civilian employees at 6% or low and give police officers a little higher raise and firefighters? So we looked at all of those numbers to give you good information to make some decisions as you do the final judgment. We also looked at a levy appeal, additional dollars for you. So this evening, I'm going to kind of summarize the impact of those to you with the figures that are currently entered into Gateway, which is the state's database for collecting property tax information from all local units of government across the state. That is what is entered and what will be advertised. Your public hearing on the budget is no longer tonight. It's going to be Wednesday, the 19th. Then you will formally adopt the budget on Tuesday, November the 1st, which is the last day that you have to adopt the budget. It's fine. You adopt the budget that night. Within 2 days, we'll then upload and finalize all those documents with the exact adopted figures into Gateway and move forward. With that, you've received a rather lengthy budget packet this evening. I think where we'll start is kind of going through the memo component of it and showing you some of the figures that we'll have. You do have in here all of the budget forms and the worksheets. I think what's going to be most important to you tonight is about where the levy is and where salary and benefits are, because those are the key amounts, the key things that changed from the 13th through tonight. Let's see here. I think one of the most important things for you to know, and if you would like to follow along, it's really about the maximum levy calculation and the excessive levy appeal that we have before you and the numbers. And there's a section that has the maximum levy calculation figures. And I want to explain 2 components of that. I don't know if you can find that page in your packet. You were allowed the 5% growth quotient that all the cities and towns across the state were allowed to have for 2023. of course, you have your community capital development funds at $276,000. So originally going into the 2023 budget, your maximum levy was going to be $3,239,000. Then we've kind of revised that now because there's two additional components that we can add to the levy. Your DLGF budget director realized, oh my goodness, their assessed value has gone through the roof. A lot of that is due to some of your annexations last year. You have over 1.4 million in assessed value with some annexations. So with that, they applied an annexation factor. This is nothing you had to do extra. It's what was applied because of that growth in that AV. So the annexation factor is 0.0023 times your current levy, which gave you just an additional $6,816 to the max levy without you doing anything but growing, right? And then in the effort to try to find as many dollars as we could find, we did go through the steps of saying, is Danville eligible for the 3-year levy growth appeal? The levy appeal that's related to your last 3 years of assessed value growth. Just behind this maximum levy page is that eligibility worksheet. And when you go through the steps, you're simply using your assessed value for the last 3 years, and you're comparing that to the state's growth. You're comparing your growth to the state's growth for the last 3 years. And the fact is Danville has exceeded the state's growth by greater than 1.02, which meant you were eligible for this appeal. So when you take the difference and multiply that by your maximum levy, that allows you to have $84,460 of new levy dollars because of this 3-year growth appeal. We moved forward and we actually have the appeal for you for council to make that decision tonight. The appeal is to fund a new police officer, which has been included in the budget. That wasn't in the budget on the 13th. Literally, the total compensation of that police officer is within $100 of this levy appeal. You certainly have the need for the public safety component of the town services and the size of your department. As you know, originally it was more than one officer that was requested as a new hire. So with that, you will have the decision tonight before you to officially adopt that levy appeal. It is advertised, it is included in the budget because it's required to be per Indiana code. So with your blessing, that will move forward with the Department of Local Government Finance. So any questions on your maximum levy growth or the appeal? If I explained it enough for you, are you comfortable with the worksheet papers that steps it through? So with that in mind, knowing that all other expenditures remain the same, we added the police officer and we increased the salary and benefit percentages from 6 to 7%. I can go through with you, instead of completely going through that 16-line statement again of all the funds, remember that shows you the second half of this year and all of next year's cash flow from cash balances to revenues and expenditures. I have it summarized for you exactly where you are as to what's in Gateway here. For the most part, we have a lot of balance funds, which means that your revenues for next year exceed your expenditures, so you're going to kind of add to that cash reserves. And that's your local road and street fund. That budgeted surplus is $21,000. Your park and rec fund, the budgeted surplus is $48,000. Now remember, we transitioned all of park employees, their salary and their benefits, and the tax dollars with it, to the park fund, so they kind of can truly see their total business, their total operation. The park bond, the debt service funds, obviously those you're funding those to make your bond payments. Almost a break-even budget for them. Cumulative capital improvement, which is a lot of your building repairs. That is truly 100% break even what's coming in. We budgeted out as repairs. It's only about $20,000. Your CCD fund, where you're doing a lot of some projects. $124,000 budgeted in surplus, edit tax, then food and beverage barely, and your host community fund. You had to revise that. You had proposed originally quite a bit of a proposed deficit, but understanding the need to bring that in and bring that fund in. Where you're dipping into your cash reserves to fund the ensuing year's budget is your general fund, right? You're going to dip into that by $170,000. You're still going to have a proposed cash balance at the end of next year of $4.1 million, which I believe is sufficient enough that the DLGF will allow you to dip into those reserves. Same with motor vehicle highway. You've got a salary benefit, you've got road paving, you've got some capital equipment kind of split between MVH and the edit fund. We're still dipping into those reserves with $650,000 still on hand at the end of next year. Park non-reverting has plenty of cash to fund their $17,000 deficit. I believe that the way Will runs the parks, it's probably not even going to be a deficit by the end of next year, but that's where the numbers come in for budgeting. Law enforcement continuing on, that simply is the math of the revenues coming in, the expenses going out, well, $850, $40,000 on hand. So we're really strong across the tax funds. You've done very well at saving money, building some reserves. We know there's going to be continued growth, and there is that much of a risk at dipping into these savings to move forward with the 2023 budget, in my opinion. When you move to the next page with the utilities, now obviously we don't have to advertise the utility funds, and you technically, legally, you do not have to have a resolution or ordinance that adopts the utility fund budgets because they're pure enterprise funds as the DLGF looks at this. However, they are a part of obviously the total compensation and are included with the budgets that we're doing for all of their funds. They all have projected surpluses for next year with the proposed cash balances as well, of healthy balances for those operations. When it comes to health insurance, you knew at the last meeting there was a 9.5% increase to the total premiums going into 2023. We voted as a body it was going to be less than a $10,000 impact to keep the amounts, the dollar amounts that the employees are paying for their employee contribution the same. So the percentage increase will change just a little bit, but the amounts that they're paying this year will continue, and that will be the same amount that is deducted from their payroll checks next year. Unless during open enrollment, someone goes from single to family, right? Then their amount's going to change from the tier change, but not the actual amount for that's applied across the board for both plans that are offered. We've talked about the host community fund, that the amount of money for the technology budget, professional services that we transferred to the general fund last year have remained in the general fund for 2023. When we talked about that, the fund is used to pay bond payments, so town square maintenance, and downtown partnership, some festivals, some grant match dollars, and then some priority projects and capital purchases that we actually pared back to make this a balanced budget. The one thing that is not included in here are the donation funds. I personally think it's very important that the donation funds are fully reconciled, that you know exactly the balance of the funds and what the dollars that are in those were contributed for, so you can make sure you're spending it the right way. So you will still need to have an appropriation, you'll still need to have a budget for those donation funds, right? You have to have the authority to spend, whether it's a tax fund or a home rule fund. But those will need to be done at a later date and time when those can be really reconciled and proven to you where those cash balances are. So I did not include the police donation or the park donation fund within this budget. It's not required for the state. Total compensation, said it a few times, 7% salary increase to civilian and public and safety employees. There is a new full-time laborer in the park department that is factored into this, a new full-time fire marshal in the fire department. The police department increased, remember we increased the uniform allowance by $200 per officer. It went from $800 to $1,000 per officer. That is in the budget. What is also in here now is the new officer from the levy appeal that we're applying for. I wanted to let you know that expenditures for longevity benefit are not incorporated into this budget. You can certainly have that discussion if you're wanting to add that money back in, but it's more than just the table. You're gonna have a policy, and you're gonna have some other additional information that you're going to need to kind of adopt other than just the budgeted amount. The income tax estimate that is in this budget, it was what was provided in August from the state. They will do an update in October, middle of October, so it's not posted yet. And then they'll do their final certification in November. It could go up, but if the overall rate in the county hasn't changed, in talking to Miranda Busick from DLGF, it's likely that your numbers aren't going to change a whole lot. So I'm very comfortable with what is in the budget from their August. And I think it can only increase if it gets better, would be my guess. So the number that's there for the budget is very sufficient. The one thing I would like to also show you in the next section is the cost of compensation, the salary increase comparisons section. That's after the appeal and max levy. What this shows you is where we started on September 13th at the very top, with everyone having a 6% salary increase, and what that deficit was. So for example, with the general fund, it was $96,000, the budgeted deficit. And if you move down the different sections of this spreadsheet, it shows you where the deficit would be with a 7% increase, or with an 8% increase, et cetera. And then finally, on the second page of that, it shows that split, because some council members had questions about what would it look like if there was an additional cost to keep civilian employees the same and increase public safety, or to keep the fiscal impact of 6%. What would it look like to give civilian employees 4%, but public safety an 8%? And you can see the impact of that across all the funds, taking away to increase that general fund expenditure. But I know that you wanted to see these numbers. And again, what is incorporated into this budget is the 7% for everyone. And then finally, the last page in that section really kind of shows the difference by fund from 6% to 7%, which is really what I believe the fiscal body had in mind in looking at. You know, it's funny, I went back and I looked at last year, because I know everyone is really concerned about keeping the quality employees that you have and treating them fairly and giving them a cost of living adjustment. And I really believe that the town is moving forward in such a great direction. I'm going to recap what you did last year, including what's proposed this year. I think you can be really kind of pleased to recall that and to see the changes that we've made the last few years. You had a 3% increase to everyone last year. We're proposing 7% this year. All the department heads received a $5,000 increase last year as well. You had a relocation, a transfer of a line locator to general funds with some other dollars. We went to a full-time human resources director. We have a new public works full-time laborer. We have a water utility full-time laborer. We went from part-time to full-time for a community engagement coordinator. There was an increase of police department part-time dollars by $5,000. We did an equalization of pay between detective positions and firefighter medic positions. We had a data entry clerk from EMS from part-time to full-time. That's a lot that we did last year, including the new proposed positions for this year. And as you're growing, as your assessed value is growing, and I know we're getting ready to do a study on what that new levy dollars is going to look like over 5 years, I think you're really heading in the right direction with your slow and steady growth and really looking at the departments and what they're doing and what their needs are in comparison to their peers around the state. So I just thought that was worth pointing out this evening, that you're doing a lot of good things with the budget and with staff. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I know I went through that kind of quickly. We spent a lot of time on that 18-month view of each fund and made the impact of the changes that you wanted to see. And that's where we are this evening.
You guys have- So I just have one question.
Yeah.
A couple of comments. And I guess thankfully, or not thankfully, have been talking about this between you and Manny for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So a lot of this isn't necessarily new, but just anytime you pass a budget that has a general fund in the deficit, it's a little, what? Say something, okay.
Yeah.
Did I misspeak? Okay. The page 4, your closing comments. This is effectively a living document. A budget is just that, it's a prediction.
Right.
Here's what we want to do, here's what we think we're gonna have. You emphasize there that, we can make changes if there are supported additional expenditures that are needed, then this is probably understood, but I want to say it out loud. That also means that if things don't go the direction we hoped that it would, we might have to make some tough decisions during the year next year and say, yeah, you know what, we probably shouldn't do that. We
Correct.
shouldn't spend that. Let's push that off or whatever. So I want to make sure folks understand that. And then a couple of comments. Anytime you have effectively going over basically in these 4 funds, general fund being the largest one. Overall, and I know we can't use this fund's money for this expenditure and so forth, they're specified in how they're used. But we have a net surplus across the board, just over 16,000. So I think that's a positive to look at. And you just did an overview of what we did last year, and I think that's important because it's been stated by several that we're not doing anything to help anybody.
Right.
And I think that you really have to get on the inside, if you will, to look at the numbers to understand, one, you can't always get what you want, but we have been working hard over the last couple of years especially to try to meet those demands. The department head increase of $5,000 last year is a perfect example. That's an equity adjustment. You're not making enough, we want to pay more. And then the fact that we're doing this 7% increase, assuming it gets passed, and the fact that that puts us in a little bit of a deficit for the year, I think that should show the risk that we're willing to take as a council, as a town, to try to start meeting those, try to catch up, if you will, with what we think folks should really earn. And so I hope that does not get lost on folks. And the last comment, we do this, and this is more of an opinion, I think, but I think we do this, we're okay with this because we see that potential growth coming to town over the next few years. So it's worth the risk. We think it's going to catch up with itself, if you will. And so I think those are important things to highlight as we go through it and make these approvals.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a tool. It's a working document. It's a tool. You watch your revenues coming in. For example, let's just say if MVH dollars aren't coming in as high as what's projected, right? You don't buy that capital equipment until the revenues come in. You're monitoring cash all the time. It's a constant review and constant monitoring. And you, like you say, you can dip further into cash balances. For example, you've got some money in edit, if some unexpected expenditures come up. You can do additional appropriations and spend more. You can also do budget reductions if you need to as well.
And I know we've said this a few times, but thank you for all of your
You're
efforts
welcome.
on this.
You're welcome. It's a lot of information.
Yeah.
You needed to have that information to make the best decision
And this
possible
looks
for
like a
the.
really neat report. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody have
Thank you for doing that. That's good stuff.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions?
You answered my question before. before we started when he came up here and explained it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Maybe what your question was.
We have nothing else on the agenda, correct?
Council,
I will,
what's next?
so we are making a decision on this in the council, on the levy.
At the council meeting tonight will be the petition for the levy appeal only, that you'll have to, clearly I'm encouraging approval of that. And you will sign the petition, we will submit it to the DLGF. Public hearing will be on the 19th. And unless you want to change numbers, it will be the exact same numbers that are in here, that is in the DLGF database right now, and then with final adoption on the 1st.
Jay, did you have anything to add?
No. Unless you guys have any questions?
All right, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second. A motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. We are adjourned.